So the last time I did a presentation like this, they had what was called the broadband mesh network. And it was using little home Linksys routers that had been reflashed with different software. Well, since then, we've grown a lot. And now we're using really nice equipment that's meant to be outdoors. This winter, when I was in Arizona, I was trying to communicate Linksys to Linksys with one of my neighbors down the street. So I stuck my Linksys outside. Well, it rained. That Linksys is now in the trash. But this new equipment is meant to be outside, and it's really nice. So what we're using is we're using commercial off-the-shelf equipment. And this is an example of, and I'll just pass these around. These are from a company called Ubiquiti. It's called a Bullet. And you can see over here what they do is they hook up to an antenna like this. All you feed it is a single Ethernet cable that has power on it. I'll just pass these around. There's not much to look at, but it's kind of a. I'll move the slides for you. Oh, okay. They're cheap. If you look on the side of the ones that I've got what I paid for them on them. I think one's a little bit more expensive than the other, but I think it kind of averages $45-50 for these things on the used market. What they were used for are companies that were providing internet over the air. And they've gotten even better equipment, and so they've taken a lot of this older equipment, and it's of no use to them. So you're seeing a lot of this stuff show up on eBay and Amazon. And that's where I've been going to find this stuff, on eBay and Amazon. But it's low cost. So we're talking microwaves, and you do need line of sight. I'll tell you one thing. Wisconsin is probably one of the worst places in the world to be trying to do this because we've got these things called trees. I was just spending the weekend out in Iowa, and I'm looking around, I'm thinking, man, this is like microwave heaven out in Iowa. This is like microwave hell. So it requires towers, tall towers. The speed, I've got this one, it says 1 megabit up to 60 megabits. And there are ways to get even higher speeds, 100 megabits per second, using something called MIMO, but we won't worry about that for now. Okay, next one. Wrong way. Okay. So what these nodes do, they're like little repeaters. Each one of these nodes talks to any node that it can hear. So you connect to one node, and if you're trying to go from A to B, you might have to go through a couple of other nodes. But the cool thing is you don't even have to worry about it because the software in the node figures it all out. Next one. So you can cover long distances through multiple hops. And as long as the hops have strong signal strength, you won't even notice that you're going through a lot of hops. And you do get, on 2 meters, if you're trying to, we have like digital on 2 meters, and you can pass digital information on 2 meters or 6 meters, but the speed can't compare to the speed that you get. You can send like these FEMA messages. You can send these FEMA messages, boom, and it's there. So they're fast. Next one. So here's an example of a town. I don't remember, I don't know where it is, but in any case, this is how their mesh network is set up. You got people all over town putting up nodes, and if you want to get from like this node here to this node, you know, it goes through a couple of hops to get there, but you don't even realize how it's getting there. It's really fast. Next. So, okay, so we've talked about this. They're small, low power. So these bullets run 600 milliwatts. It doesn't seem like a lot of power, but 600 milliwatts combined with the death ray here.
What did I do? I brought cake.
Yeah. That's called a grid antenna. And so it kind of looks like a grill, really, that you put, you know, maybe you could use this to maybe make a few hamburgers. But so it's called a grid antenna. This thing has 24 dBi gain. Whoa. So you add this, and it's the resultant effective radiated power is in a lot of watts. So you can easily have a range of 10 miles or more. I've got one of these in Mesa. Now we're talking Arizona, not Wisconsin with a gazillion trees. But I've got this up just over the roof of my little house there in Mesa, and I can connect to Usery Mountain, which is 7 miles away from me, and with a good signal. So. And 7 miles isn't really a lot of miles if you're, you know, up high enough. So they create a network all by themselves. You don't need a computer. You can just, so let's say that we talked to the DNR and they said, yeah, go ahead and use our fire tower. We're not using it. You stick a node up there just all by itself, no computer, no nothing. Just stick up the node, and that's all you need. You don't need a computer connected to anything. I mean, eventually, when you want to do something, you have to have a computer, but you can just stick nodes up in the middle of nowhere without any computer. You just stick them up and forget about them, and they just act like little repeaters. Next one. Okay, so mesh nodes within the wireless range, they automatically join the network. There's nothing to do. If for some reason, you know, something blocks the signal, the whole network figures out a different path to get to where you're trying to go. So if one node fails, no problem. They try to connect to some other node. So the number of hops really doesn't mean anything as long as the signals are decent. Okay, next one. So just like the regular internet, somebody can put up a website that's just on the mesh network, because all the mesh network is the internet, but a private internet.
That it's an internet on steroids.
Yeah. So it's all it is an internet. So you can put up a server, you can put up an FTP server, you can put up a web server, anything that you can do on the regular internet, you can do on the mesh network. But only the people that are connected to the mesh network can make use of those services, not the outside world.
Yeah, that's what I meant by intranet instead of intra. Right?
Yeah, intra, that's right.
And here, having spare mesh nodes means you can deploy them for several roles. Okay, so let's say that you're doing a parade. You could bring something like this, you know, a couple of guys, you could have somebody down, let's say like 8th Street, for example. There's no trees on 8th Street. So you could probably get from down by the Quick Trip, all the way up to Don's house practically, down 8th Street, there would be nothing in the way. So, the cool thing about these ubiquity nodes is you can make use of some additional channels that are only ham band channels. You're not competing with, Aunt Millie and her computer and, all these people that have all these different Wi-Fis. They're all up here. We're down here on channel -2. So that's, so far everybody that's using any of this newer equipment, they're all using channel -2 because it's the farthest away from everybody else. So you get hardly any, like no interference. There's another, the 5 gigahertz band. Now, in Mesa, no, it's John. In Mesa, they make use of both the 2.4 gigahertz band and the 5.8 gigahertz band. And, but they're all connected together.
I have a question if you don't mind.
Yes, John.
But if you use your 5 gigahertz band, isn't line of sight more critical?
It is, but but the antennas are higher gain, so you get more power. So yeah, line of sight is more critical, but I don't know. There's the biggest thing you have to worry about is, well, let's see. No, we get up here, you can see these channels like 178, 179, channel 180 up there. It's away from everything else. Some people have said that there might be a little bit more interference on the 5 gigahertz band because there's like more stuff on 5 gigahertz. But in Mesa, they use both. There are some guys that only have a 5 gigahertz and they aim their antenna at somebody else that has 5 gigahertz. Eventually, they all get connected together, and it doesn't make any difference. So you don't really, and I'm going to do a demo, and you'll actually see that. So next one. Okay, so I've talked about this. So let me show you some of these devices here. You know, you'll see this vertical antenna here. It's, what would you say the diameter is on this? It's about 3 inches. And it's probably about, what, 5 feet, 4 or 5 feet tall.
Starting from where?
Here, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so when I bought this, in the catalog, it didn't look that big. And it was just a little picture. It looked like a little stick. And I thought it was about this big. I thought, I wonder why the shipping charge is so high. Then the lady brought it to the house. I was like, whoa. So this thing here, this is the radio. It's called a rocket. It runs 650 milliwatts, but you'll notice it's got 2 antenna connectors, and the antenna has two connectors. And you wondered, huh? So this radio uses something called, and I've got a slide up on it. It uses something called MIMO, M-I-M-O, multiple input, multiple output. So there's actually 2 antennas in here. One is vertically polarized, one is horizontally polarized. And Ubiquiti has this kind of nifty scheme. You can get more data. You can send part of the, so you're on a channel, right? So you're on a channel. So how can you get more data on one channel? Well, what you can do is you can send some of the data vertically polarized, some of the data horizontally polarized. The antenna at the other end, he's got the same deal. He's got a MIMO antenna, and the receiver puts the two data streams back together, and you can get like double the throughput with this MIMO technology. Now, Arden, the Arden software doesn't use it quite that way. The way it uses it is, as you're sending a signal in microwave, sometimes you hit buildings, you hit things, trees. When you hit things, sometimes the signal changes phase a little bit, but by having the two antennas, vertical and horizontal, it kind of helps mitigate the multipath. It's called multipath distortion. So it kind of mitigates that. So you get like better signal strength doing it that way. If you have a rocket, though, like this is only vertically polarized. So you're only going to get just one, you know, you're not going to even see the horizontal signal coming off this antenna. So I said the rocket runs about 650 milliwatts, but that power is split, you know, part horizontal, part vertical. So you're not getting all 650 milliwatts in the same polarity. But anyway, it's kind of cool technology. And these work out really well, like on water towers.
Mike, I got a question for you about the
Yes.
parallel box. When I was looking up the mesh network and stuff like that, I see a lot of them having the parabolic dish upright. Does that change the polarization of that, or what?
No. What changes the polarization, see this thing here, right in the middle? So it's going vertical. So this is what changes the polarity. So you're right. I mean, if I turn the whole, I could just turn this and it would be horizontal. Or I can tip the whole dish like this. It'll still be horizontal, but it'll look vertical. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because the dish will be going up and down, but you're actually horizontally polarized because what determines it is the direction this thing is aiming. And then the other, there's two versions of this little, now this thing's kind of cool. This is called a nano station. This is the nano station loco. And that it doesn't mean like it's confused or anything. I think loco means local. I mean, you know, like smaller distance. It doesn't run as much power. These are good for about 6 miles or so. But the cool thing is the antenna is part of the unit. I mean, this has got a 60-degree sector antenna built in. So you get one of these, you put it on a pole, and when I got one, it's got this little curvy thing on the back that goes right up against the pole. I thought, well, what holds it to the pole? So I had to open up the user manual, because when you buy these used, all you get is this. So I got the user manual. When you get one, a brand new one from Ubiquiti, it comes with a zip tie.
Mike, we won't tell anybody you did the manual.
Because I couldn't figure out, well, it's not going to stay there. It's not suction or anything. How do they connect it? Oh, they just use a zip tie. So you probably, if you get one of these and you put it up on a pole, you probably ought to buy the kind of zip tie that isn't like UV approved or something, because I've used like the non-UV ones and they don't last. So anyway, so those are the an example of what the radios are, and if you can come up and take a look at these if you want later.
The top one is unidirectional. The other ones are directional, right?
Right. Yeah, this is like 60 degrees. This is omnidirectional, and this is even smaller, like I think this might be like 60 degrees. But a lot more gain than this, I think.
Do you get much of a gain from the top one other than the vertical and horizontal polarization?
I'll have to look up that antenna and see how much gain. I mean, it does have gain. It may be like 7 dBi gain, because what you're doing is you're keeping the signal low, so if you're flying straight above these things, forget it. Oh, and then the other thing is, so rocket, bullet, nanostation, loco, there is something called a nanostation, and it looks just like this, but it's like 3 times the size. Okay, so I talked about MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. And you can always tell if you have a MIMO radio because it's going to be like this rocket here with 2 antenna connectors on it. And if it's a MIMO antenna, it's going to have 2 connectors on it. Next. So ardenmesh.org is the website they've got really good documentation. It explains how to, from step 1 all the way through to set up one of these things and get them working. All those, the ones that are passing around, I've flashed all those with the Arden software. So they're ready to go. They just have to be configured with your call sign. So they all have the right software. You have to connect them to your computer, go to the configuration page, put in your call sign, and you give them a name, whatever you want to call it. Yeah?
Is that bullet considered the node?
Yes, right. So there's there are some TP-Link devices that you can also flash with the Arden software, and you can use a Raspberry Pi, but the Raspberry Pi isn't a radio, so you still have to connect it to some kind of a radio. Next. So there you go. Oh, I think, is this called the Air Grid? There are a couple other devices that I didn't talk about. So the bullet, that's the one that I'm passing around. You can get them in 2 gigahertz flavors and 5 gigahertz. They look exactly the same. You can't tell unless you actually look at the label on it. It's a single polarity device, so it's whatever way your antenna is what it is. Okay, so that's, see, how big does this thing look?
Don't look like that.
Is that what you're expecting in the mail? I mean, doesn't it look? Oh, well. Okay, so the nanostation, that's this little guy here. It's got an integrated antenna. It is a dual polarity device inside there. So the nanostation loco is your 6 mile, 15 mile plus with the real nano station, which is like this, it looks just like that, but like this big. Ah, the power beam, yeah. It comes with a ray dome. And these are good for, like if you want to do point to point, you know, just get a signal out someplace so that can distribute it to the, you know, let's say we had people up in Arpin or something. We could maybe have one of these on the water tower, aim it at Powers Bluff, and then Powers Bluff could have another one to service the people, you know, like in that area. We talked about the rocket. That's the one with the 2 antennas. So good for distribution or point to point. You know, like I said, we could put one of those up on the water tower. DTD linking. So I was reading the website, and one of the if you have a bunch of these in your house, they will all talk to each other. But they're saying if you do that, it slows down your network because it's having to do all this stuff over the radio. So device-to-device linking means you just stick an Ethernet cable and hook them together, which requires something called a switch, which I'll talk about later. But anyway, so I use some device, so DTD linking. You can, well, keep going, and I've got a thing here. Mesh tunnels. I'm going to show you what a mesh tunnel is. It's, if you've got somebody that's kind of far away, but he wants to be kind of a part of the network, you can do a tunnel through the real Ethernet, through the internet, and I'll show you that.
Is that a VPN?
Yes, it's like a VPN, exactly. Next.
Mike, on the Ethernet, will that work with power line adapters?
With what?
You can get these power line adapters, which basically they plug in the wall, and then your Ethernet cable plugs in that, and depending how many of those you have, you can set your home up with Ethernet.
Sure. I mean, there's no reason why that wouldn't work. I'm going to do a demo in a second, and here's what we've got. I've got a bullet over there, and it's just got a little vertical antenna on it, and it's connected to a switch, which goes into the internet, which is going to tunnel back to my Linksys at home, which is connected to my other Linksys back at home. In Arizona, here's what a friend of mine, George, said, you know, I'm not using this grid antenna. How would you like to use it? I said, sure. So I stuck a bullet on the end of it, and I tell you, and I'm not as nice as this guy in Mesa, but I think he's maybe more well off than I am. Anyway, so I got one hand giving me, well, at least to borrow, a grid antenna, and then Dick gives me a bullet. You know, like, could you use this? Sure. So I take my borrowed bullet and my borrowed grid antenna, stick it up on a pole, and connect to the mesh network in Mesa. And you have to go into your Linksys and make some software changes, which, what?
Ports, open up ports.
No, there's like some files in there, some network files, and you have to add tagging so that you can connect the bullet to the to the Linksys. But once you do that, then as far as the Linksys is concerned, it's just another device connected to the Linksys. And so even though the Linksys is not on channel -2, but this is on channel -2, so I see all my other Linksys. So I go to my screen, I see all my Linksyses, and I see all of the guys in Mesa that are on channel -2 with their Ubiquity equipment. And it's just one Ethernet connection plugged into my Linksys. Then I've got a tunnel back to Wisconsin, which goes to a Linksys, which connects to another Linksys, which has a Raspberry Pi connected to it. So I can use my little IP telephone and call Don, who's connected to the tunnel to his Linksys network back in Wisconsin Rapids. And I can see his cameras. I've got
Big Brother Mike.
another Linksys in my shop that's got a Panasonic camera on it, so I can look around my shop and see if anybody's inside my shop. Actually, we'll look at it in a second. All that's in there is my grill, my gas grill. But I've got another IP telephone in there too, so I can call my wife in the house over the mesh network. And then this thing's aimed up at Usery Mountain, which a lot of other guys connect to, so that's how I'm connected to a lot of other people up through Usery. Next.
Mike,
Yes.
okay, why don't you, there's maybe a few people here that don't really understand what the purpose of this in the big picture, let's see, like emergency.
Ah!
Oh, you're gonna get.
You mean emergency communication uses?
Okay, I was looking at you like that. Okay, all right, now we're getting. Because, you know, you're explaining all this home use stuff or whatever. Now let's get into the, please.
Right, so that's what, Arden, it works with CERT, if you've heard of them, Community Emergency Response Team. They work with, the ARRL emergency stuff, RACES. So all these different mesh groups, once they're set up, and it takes a while. This doesn't happen overnight. They work with all those different emergency groups. So a lot of the applications that they use, for example, let's say Solaris has a big outage, and now all of a sudden, all the phones are out at the hospital, and they can't communicate. No problem for the mesh network, because you could set up a portable node. You could have a PBX set up. You could have these IP telephones are so cheap now, you could buy a barrel of them. And all you have to do is start handing them out and connect them to a cheap node. Like a little one of these bullets with a small little antenna. And you can get a floor or two, and you just have a couple of them. You hook the telephone into the node, and you tell people, okay, if you want to call the operating room, their extension 16 or whatever. But you could do something like that. You can set up a whole phone. You could just bring a phone system to somebody. Generally, people they find don't like to talk on radios. They would rather talk on something like this. No problem. There are IP telephone apps that you can put on here. In fact, the other day I was talking to Don over the mesh with my iPhone. I just had an IP app on it. I went to that app, and now I'm just using something that I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with these, ICOM radios and stuff. They make me nervous, but I'm not nervous if I'm holding something that I understand. I understand this. So you can make, if you've got the things set up right on in your mesh network, you can easily support something like an iPhone. And so now the guy can communicate. He's lost all of his communications everywhere else, but the mesh guys come in, they're the savior, and you maybe put an app on this and say, hey, you're good to go. You can actually set up a gateway to the internet. Generally, we try to keep off the internet, but in an emergency, if you needed to have some kind of a gateway into the internet, maybe the internet's down in Wisconsin Rapids, but it's working in, I don't know, Pittsville or something. You can turn on a gateway, and now people can have access to the internet through the mesh, through maybe the node in Pittsville is working just fine on the internet, even though Wisconsin Rapids is down. You can have streaming video cameras. If you look here at this picture on the handout, they're doing thank you, they're doing a parade. And they got a bunch of guys out in the field with cameras, and they've got the cameras connected to different big screens here, and somebody in the emergency communications room can see, like, okay, this is what's going on 8th Street between Chestnut and, whatever. And then now this is what's going on from Grand Avenue to this.
And that's real time as well.
That's right.
So when we get down to Adams County Parade, we can keep an eye on Jeff then.
You could. So there's all kinds of applications that you can use using the grid, using the mesh network. Here's some more. Keyboard to keyboard email. The guys in Mesa have their own email server set up. It's not on the internet, it's only on the mesh network. And they can send email messages to each other, or in emergency, you could get email messages from the high school to the hospital, or whatever. There's no internet. All you've got is the mesh network. The mesh network has its own email server, so you can enable, email messages. People know how to send email messages. Okay, so even if they don't know how to fill out one of those MCOM or FEMA forms, they know how to do email. And you can read all the rest of this stuff. Next. Now we can come up with for the guys that want to go ahead with any of this stuff, this is just how they're naming their nodes in Mesa. So this isn't like a nationwide standard or anything like that. This is how they're doing it in Mesa. So start out with your call sign, the kind of equipment you're using, air grid, bullet, rocket, and then what kind of antenna. So the rocket is a sector antenna, and it's aiming south. So it's kind of good to be able to see if you're, when you're looking at nodes, where they're looking. And it's easy to do it by just looking at the node name. And you'll see that in the little demo. So when you're designing your network, okay, we all know that's got to be line of sight. And one of the things you're going to read about as you're reading through the documentation and learning more about this is something called, I know, it looks like the Fresnel zone. But I don't want to hear anybody call it the Fresnel zone because it's not the Fresnel zone, it's the Fresnel zone. It's French. So no talk about Fresnel zones. If you hear somebody calling it a Fresnel zone, you know they weren't here tonight. So, here you got two antennas. Here you've got your Fresnel zone. The whole idea when you're doing line of sight is to keep everything out of there. And it's hard to move mountains, but you might have to get up a little bit higher. Next. All right, now let's try some fun things here. The east side water tower to KD9 FWN. So here we go. This is the line of sight from the water tower to Don's house. Next. Let's look at the Fresnel zone. Is this showing up here, the little bumpity bumps? Okay. So I had to look this up because I thought this is cool, but how did they do it? The ISS, the space station, the International Space Station, has radared the whole world. And they know exactly how far it is. I mean, you know, they can do this. You know, what the level is everywhere.
We have an app for that.
So anyway, I stuck the water tower up at 200 feet. I gave Don a 50-foot tower. And so I mean, it's a clear shot. It doesn't hit anything on the ground, except what this doesn't include is like if there's like a mill sitting on the ground. According to the instructions that I read, what they're measuring is the ground. Now, if you got a big building there, I don't know how they could get to the ground, so I don't know for sure if these things are the actual ground level or if like the ground. So I don't know. So I don't know the answer to that. The same thing with trees. They claim that the radar hits the ground and not the tree canopy. So you have to, when you're looking at these maps, and you can see, here's the website, link.ui.com. So if you go to link.ui.com, you can put an antenna here, an antenna there. You can look at the Fresnel zone and decide whether or not you can contact that guy. But you may have to figure in the trees yourself. Let's go to the next one. So this is the east side water tower. Oh, did we go the right way? Oh, west side water tower. There we go. West side water tower to KD9 FWN. So you'll get the idea. I don't know what, there's like a rise, right? This is the water tower. So Don, I don't know where this is, but this looks like there's some pretty high ground.
My guess is that would be at the corner of 186, 20 Trunk B and Highway 83. That'd be probably about 7 miles up the road. There is a big hill there.
Okay. On the, when you actually look at the map, you can move your mouse right to here, and it will show you on the map above where that spot is. And you can like zoom in on it and see like, you know, where is this spot. I did put in, just for my own information, I put an antenna over on Powers Bluff. And man, the ground that they show here, you know, it goes way up. So I know that it's close. Let's try the next one. Another kind of a map that you can get. So I put an omnidirectional antenna on the east side water tower. I mean, not really, but simulated it. And this is apart from the trees. This is the kind of coverage that you would get. Light blue is like really good. This reddish color is really bad. And you'll notice where it is. It's all like around, like down by the river, you know, because this is low. But as long as you get up away from the river, you know, you can get pretty good coverage apart from the trees, okay?
How far south does it go?
Well, you can, if you go to the real website, you can put your mouse here and drag this out as far as you want. I dragged it as far as Rome, and it's still pretty good, but I think you got to get up in the air a ways.
You said down by the river, what town is just south?
Well, this is like Port Edwards here.
Okay.
So Port Edwards, not too bad in Wisconsin Rapids, but as you get south toward Port Edwards, it gets pretty iffy.
And south of that is Nakusa?
Yeah, Nakusa's down here, but I didn't drag the circle out that far. I mean, but you would get coverage. N9MS to KC9PG. So, here we are. Why are you so high?
Drink so long.
Did you give me a big tower or what?
No, I mean, I put the same size tower. Mine is way down on, like, low, and then yours is way up on.
Is it up high because of the lake, where the lake, you know, the Sherwood, the Lake Camelot is up higher?
Yep.
Be on the hill.
Yeah, I figured we would be about the same height, but yeah, you're up pretty.
There, as you're going up east on D, that altitude or that rise is pretty substantial.
Yeah, we're only, how far are we? A couple miles away?
5.8 kilometers. Quick. Well,
2.7 miles, like 3 miles.
yeah, about 3 miles. I mean, but it looks pretty good. We got right here, and I zoomed in on it. It's like right around in here. Apparently this ground here is
Water tower over there, or is that?
up higher or something.
There's a big farm there.
No, there's no farms between there.
So, I mean, it doesn't look like it would be really bad. I mean, you can have stuff encroaching on the Fresnel zone, but I mean, to me, it looks when you when you put your cursor on here and see where it is on the map here, it's, I don't know. I think it was like right in here.
Where's that cell tower on there located? Is that, they usually tend to find a high point
Oh.
for installation of these cell towers, so it might possibly be that there is some sort of an,
Well, now I got a question.
Because you can see, like, this whole area right in here is, it really kind of comes up.
Is that ground, what's shown in the gray, is that strictly ground, no trees, no water?
No,
Right, that's what they claim it is.
No water then. So the slough in there, the dip, right before.
This is water. This is,
That's true.
yeah,
Probably true.
this is the lake right here. Yeah, that's, if you put your cursor, like right here, you're like right in the middle of the lake.
yeah, that's Sherwood, I'm on Camelot, which is a lot. So
would that be the water or would that be the bottom of that lake?
Bottom, I think that'd be the bottom.
Well, I don't know what radar would
Penetrate?
penetrate, I don't know.
I'd assume that's water, because that's quite a dip now.
It is.
Your house down to the bottom of the lake, that would be understandable.
So, yeah, that's a good point. It's probably not the top of the water, it's probably,
The bottom of the water.
but is the lake that flat?
Well, it's excavated out about, or not excavated, but it's the basis was originally a 14-mile creek. It was wider in some places and others not.
It's only average of 15, 20 feet deep, so it is.
Okay. So anyway, you might want to just go to this website and play around. It's fun. I mean, it's fun.
And what's that website called again?
Link.ui.org.
Yes.
What was that?
Link.ui.com.
And it's a HTTPS.
So I just kind of zoomed in on the Fresnel zone between Paul's house and my house. So that's all that is.
And if you remember on the south side of Sherwood, there's a considerable rise up behind the lodge that goes to the east.
Big time, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of altitude there, so.
Well, the good news is, the neighbor's tree just broke off, a 70, 80-foot big basswood tree just broke off. So I might have clear view of the light sight to the east side water tower.
So now, if there's any interest and you're looking for some equipment, you can look on, I've looked on Amazon, I've looked on eBay. Before I came here tonight, I noticed a few things. One thing to be aware of, this is on eBay. They're selling off a whole bunch of these little things, 29 bucks each. But notice it says it's a bullet 2. It's missing the important letter M. Don't get this unless you just want to get something, because I made the mistake already. I bought one of these 2s. The guy said, he said it was an M2 in the description, but he had a close-up picture of this thing, which I didn't look at. And it obviously says it's a bullet 2, not an M2. Without the M, it's useless on the mesh. Can't be used. So, wouldn't you know it, I get one of these things and my Wi-Fi router dies. So now my Wi-Fi router at home is a bullet, because it works great as that. Okay, so here's a bunch of bullets, 43 bucks each. Notice it's a M5, which means 5 gigahertz. So, I'm not saying that it's good or bad, it's just what it is. If you see an M5, that means that the number after the M, which it has to have an M, tells you what gigahertz it is. So M2 is what I've got passed around. An M5 is going to be on 5 gigahertz, and if you and your buddy want to get on 5 gigahertz, great. And we'll be able to connect into the 2 gigahertz network too. So it'll all be one. Here's a NanoStation Loco for like $47.76. I paid 36 bucks for that one. Next slide.
We got more buying options for $31.12.
Oh, now here's the deal. So this is this antenna here. It's a Altalex antenna. So the antenna was $24.99. Add on $29.40 shipping. But now they've got the same thing. You can buy this thing in a 5-pack. So it's, and these are on sale. These have been on sale. I think they're like always on sale, because it was like in December, I get a like an urgent message from one of the guys in the Superstition, Arizona mesh network. Hey, Altelex has these antennas on sale. This was in December. They're still on sale. I don't think there's a big rush, but I don't know. For 80 bucks, you can get 5 of them. And so I made believe I was going to buy them because I wanted to see what the shipping cost was going to be. $42.44. So it's almost like getting 1 antenna for free if you buy 5 of them.
I'll take a free one.
Yeah, and then they sell the other one, right?
Yes.
Now, would I be able to set something like this up and then connect it to my HF rig if I wanted to do something like remotely, like something like you did just through the internet, but this
Yes.
is just private for yourself?
Yes. Sure.
And then like sending a message to the
No problem. You can run RDP over the mesh. If you can do it over the real internet, you can do it over the mesh because all it is TCP/IP. For you non-network guys, just don't worry about it. All right, so let me show you what I've got set up here for the little demo. In there I've got a bullet with a vertical antenna on it. It's connected to something called a managed switch, which means the switch is programmable. And when you're working with these nodes, most of the time you'll need a managed switch. The ones that they recommend are these Netgear ones, a GS105. I paid 22 bucks for this on eBay, brand new. So, I mean, they're not expensive. So, what I've got in here is, if you look in there, you'll see the thing with the green things blinking, that's the switch. I've got that connected to David's little portable node, that internet node. So the switch goes to David's node. There's another cable going to the bullet. The bullet has a program on it called the tunnel software. So I'm tunneling back to my house in Rome. And so how am I going to connect this computer in there? I don't have a cable. Whoops. I don't know if you can see this little USB stick. It's a router. It's made by, I forget the name of the company, GLINet. Anyway, they've got Arden software for this thing. So this is a real Arden node. So I'm talking from this node to that node. All right. When you actually connect your computer to a node, well, it doesn't look quite like this at first. We'll start from the beginning. So, I'm connected to the node that's stuck to the little USB stick that's stuck into the computer. So I gave it a name. It has to start with your call sign, N9MS. And then the model number of that thing is a USB 150. So I called it N9MS-USB 150. Now obviously if I had a bunch of them, I might call it USB 50-1 or USB, whatever. So what I want to do is I want to find out what other nodes can this node see. So I'll just click on mesh status here. And we see a bunch of stuff. like all this KB7 stuff, those are all the guys back in Mesa. That node is tunneling through David's little hotspot kind of a thing, but it uses an Ethernet connection. So that node has got software on it that's tunneling through the internet, through David's thing, back to a guy in, well, actually it's tunneling back to my house in Rome. I've got a Linksys someplace else in my house that's running a tunnel from the Linksys back to Mesa. Okay, you got that?
Yeah.
So this tunnels to Rome. We jump across to a Linksys. That Linksys connects to a node in Mesa. Also, it connects to another node. It's connecting to another. I've got two tunnels back in Rome. One goes to Mesa. The other one goes to Mesa, but it just goes to my little Linksys at my house in Rome, in Mesa. So, one of the pieces of software that has become real popular with the mesh group in Mesa is this thing called SAR Chat, which stands for Superstition Amateur Radio Club Chat. We would have we could call ours Hog Chat, or, you know, we would have our own. We wouldn't use theirs. So what it did, I connected to the chat software on this little node here, which communicated with all of the chatty things going on in Mesa. And so this is how we communicate with each other.
How secure is this? Can anybody hack this and get into it?
Well, let me say this about that.
The tunneling is really important.
I can go out and buy a node, make up a call sign, and configure the thing and join. I mean, there's really no way to stop you other than FCC rules, because you will be on a ham freak. I mean, it's no different than anybody can go to the store, buy a Bofang, buy a 2-meter thing, make up a call sign and get on the air. I mean, it's really no different than that. Somehow I don't think we have had any pirates on the mesh. I mean, but there's,
And they're never gonna tell either.
but I'll tell you one thing, if there's pirates on this, they're smart pirates. So, I've got my, so on my mesh network back in Rome, I've got a camera, and it's a PTZ camera, so I can turn it. So that's my front. That's my driveway, front part of my deck.
You didn't cut the grass.
Yeah, I noticed that.
You know, I was preparing for this meeting, so I thought maybe I'll cut the grass tomorrow.
Who's that guy walking up your driveway?
Hold it. Was there somebody walk? No, I didn't.
Looks like Wanda's got the lawn.
Oh, it looked like some guy was going pushing on a grill.
Okay, see this one down here? It says AZ Shop Cam.
I want to see that grill.
Yeah, my neighbor's got a camera. I went up and rang his bell. He wasn't home, and then I got a phone call about 3 minutes later.
Were you at my door?
The reason this is slow is I am cheap.
What, the computer is slow?
And when I left Mesa this winter, or this spring, when I left, I called the internet company. I said, shut off my internet. Well, when I get home, I see, well, it's still working, but just slow. I thought, "Pfft, cool.
Is this Mesa?
This is Mesa,
Yeah.
my shop. And there's my new gas grill.
I should have one of those. I got bears in Florida.
And it's also a PTZ camera. We could actually look at my, what I can do is if I ask myself, did I bring that home or did I leave it there? I can aim the camera there, as long as it's in the daytime.
Of course, it doesn't open drawers.
You know, yeah, now if I could have a robot go grab it and,
You don't have radios in there.
no, no. And then, so there's, we could look at, some of the guys in Mesa have other cameras. Let's see, I also had I don't know if it's still working or not.
Well, let's see what your neighbors
I thought you said you had time, I thought you said you had time, I thought you said you had time to dance for me.
Oh, that's pay-per-view and you don't have.
But, okay, so anyway, that's, if there were some guys on the Mumble, there's this thing called Mumble Chat. It's like audio. It's like an audio chatting, and it's really hi-fi. I mean, you can't, if you've got this thing on a good speaker on your computer, it sounds like they're sitting next to you. I mean, it's,
Be careful what you say.
yeah. And also, you got to be careful with these cameras. Don't put them anywhere where, you wouldn't want people to see you. So anyway, that's kind of a quick overview. There's, like I said, there's information. It does talk more about emergency communications in the handout that I gave you, and you can look at that. Also, go to ardenmesh.org, and there's a lot of information on that website.